My name is Amin Rostami, and first of all, I would like to thank all the organizers for giving me the opportunity to talk about elements of modeling and simulation that may support global submissions. As usual, this slide will be available as part of this pack and lists all my conflict of interest. Perhaps if you cannot remember any sections of this particular talk later on, you should remember only this slide because it summarizes the elements of modeling and simulation that supports global submission. And these are in these three words: quality, quality, quality. So what is so difficult about achieving global acceptance at the same level? Because we are aware that modeling and simulation are not taken at the same level with different regulatory authorities across the world. The difficulty is what actually constitutes the quality. The trust in the outcome of studies is not something that is specific to modeling and simulation. I draw your attention to the report by Baker in 2016 in Nature, when over 52% of the scientists, they actually represented significant doubts with regard to reproducibility issue of any scientific work that they are basically getting published. And if we add the other 39% that they had slight concerns and they thought that we haven't got a significant crisis, but there is some certain crisis, you will come up with a figure that is over 90%. So this is not specific to modeling and simulation, and it's not too specific to certain area. You can see it goes from chemistry through the medicine and everything. And it is also related to reproducibility, not just of the work by others, but even the work that's done in your own lab. Of course, this is not the issue of just reproducibility and getting the same result, which basically we can look at it as precision in what we are getting, but it is also the matter of accuracy. A more recent report by the National Academy of Science, Engineering and Medicine in 2019, they actually had a book that is available free online when they summarize the consensus with regard to different elements of the reproducibility and repeatability, and indicated that in fact the trust in outcome of the science in all different sectors have been going down, apart from scientists themselves and military. I don't know how the numbers for the previous slide might have changed post-COVID, but let's just move to the area of modeling and simulation. I have indicated my views with regard to one element that is related to the robustness and ease of assessment of the models, namely open source code. There are reports such as the one that you are seeing here by Tiwari Group that they have indicated there are big issues with ability to reproduce the results that they are coming from modeling and simulation done by such open source code elements. So the open source code models, they come in the form of a blessing because they are open and people can contribute, modify, add to the scientific, let's say, novelties in these models in real time. But at the same time, they come as a curse because of all those elements related to the robustness, reproducibility, and ease of assessment and understanding what changes have occurred. Regardless of the nature of the source code and whether it is open for everyone to go and change the source code, or whether it has got a gatekeeper that only allows certain certified individuals or committee to go and make such differences and record those, you have to ensure certain elements are there for assuring quality and reproducibility. We have summarized these in a recent article available online now in Pharmaceutical Research. This is Sebastian Frechen and myself, where we try to distinguish between validation, verification, and qualification. We argue whilst the validation is possible for the code itself and accuracy of the mathematical implementations, when it comes to validation of the general model and its application in PBPK and QSP area, this is a futile exercise. The mere fact of not having the clinical data is the reason for doing the modeling and simulation in these areas. If the data are available, then the model is useless because we already have got the data and we know the answer. So how this can be reconciled? Whenever we have got sets of data that they are matching the outcome that we are predicting with the modeling, this adds to the verification of the model in that particular area, but it is not still a validation for the intended purpose of use of certain drug or certain condition in which we do not have any clinical data. And of course, it is again going through the same cycle. If we redo this in the form of clinical study and validation, then why in the first place we needed to do the modeling and simulation? Because we have got the answer via the clinical study. Therefore, this becomes a circular argument. We also indicate that the number of the verifications that we are requiring in certain area increases the trust in the model and gives a higher qualification of that model for that particular area. Even it is still not going to validate that for the next intended purpose for which we have not used the model before. This is in contrast completely to the model credibility recent guidance that has been published for the medical devices by FDA, and I explain that in the next slide. Many of you might have seen this draft guidance by FDA with regard to modeling and simulation credibility criteria as applied to medical devices. This was released in December and was open for public comment. And until end of March, which was the deadline for public comments, it received more than 20 public comments. The issue of applying some of the criteria that are shown in this guidance to area of the PBPK and QSP is, I will describe it as having a hammer and seeing everything in front of you as a nail. This is picked up by the ISAP committee with regard to the certain elements of the guidance that basically says that these modeling cannot be used as a replacement for clinical studies, while the major purpose of the modeling and simulation, as we have got with the biowaivers, which are kind of model, and it was previously discussed by other speakers, the whole idea is not to have studies because we can actually predict their outcome. In our article, we outlined the process of getting the qualification, and we talked about how this qualification will be sensitive to time because it is basically integration of our latest knowledge. It is the same way that any doctor, pharmacist, and so on, they have to get a renewal for their qualifications and making sure that they are fit for that particular job. And we also indicated the number of the cases and showed that there are some discrepancies. Many of the aspects that we were talking about, they were similar to what the industrial group of scientists a couple of years ago they published with regard to the separation of the platform itself from the model verification for that intended purpose. So, what are the issues for debate and discussion? As I basically mentioned, at the beginning, defining the quality is at the moment something that we haven't got a global agreement on. In our article, we indicated that process of introducing changes to the models is something that we have to talk about and make sure that um, there is ease of assessment of such changes. They are easily identifiable. Frequency of recertifying and qualifying the models is something that we have to discuss and debate whether we need that every year, every other year, every 5 years. The number of the required verification cases is something that nobody wants to commit themselves to it, but people have discussed in private between 3 to 10 cases, giving the confidence. And finally, what constitutes transparency, and whether that is needed to be for everyone, or whether only regulators or certain group of people can have access to codes in a transparent mode to make sure that all of these are available without actually breaching any IP issues. With that, I will stop and I will be able hopefully to contribute to some of the discussion during the panel session. Thank you very much for listening.